August 16th, 1780. A dense, suffocating fog blankets a quiet pine forest in South Carolina. Through the white mist, a wall of British soldiers steps forward, their bayonets gleaming in the dim morning light. What follows is not a battle. It is one of the most shameful moments in American military history. In a matter of minutes, thousands of American soldiers drop their weapons and run for their lives in pure terror. Their commanding general flees with them, abandoning his army to the enemy. But amid the chaos, the panic, and the cowardice, one small group of men refuses to take a single step backward. Surrounded, outnumbered, and abandoned, they will make one of the most legendary last stands the world has ever seen. This is the story of the Battle of Camden, a story of cowards and absolute heroes. By the summer of 1780, the American Revolution was on the brink of total collapse in the South. The British Empire had captured the major city of Charleston, taking thousands of American prisoners. The situation was desperate. To save the southern colonies, the Continental Congress sent their most famous commander, General Horatio Gates. Known as the Hero of Saratoga, Gates was arrogant and overly confident. He believed his mere presence would terrify the British. Gates took command of a ragtag army of about 4,000 men. But there was a fatal problem. More than half of his troops were untrained, inexperienced local militia. Worse still, Gates forced them to march through the brutal summer heat of the swamplands. They had no real supplies. For weeks, the soldiers survived by eating unripe green corn and green peaches mixed with molasses. By the time they approached the town of Camden, the American army was starving, exhausted, and violently ill with dysentery. They were in no condition to fight, but General Gates ignored the warning signs. Just a few miles away, the brilliant British commander Lord Cornwallis was waiting. He had only 2,000 men, half the size of the American army. But his men were highly disciplined, battle-hardened British regulars. On the night of August 15th, both generals made the exact same decision. They both ordered a secret night march, hoping to surprise the other at dawn. At 2 o'clock in the morning, in the pitch-black darkness of a narrow road, the front lines of the two marching armies violently collided. Musket fire erupted in the dark. Chaos and confusion swept through both columns. No one knew how many enemies were in front of them. After a brief, terrifying exchange of fire, both sides pulled back. They formed their battle lines in the dark forest and waited. For the sick and exhausted American militia, standing in the cold night air, the psychological terror was building. They knew they were facing the elite of the British Empire. They just had to wait for the sun to rise. As dawn broke on August 16th, the battlefield was covered in a thick, heavy morning fog. The air was entirely still. General Gates deployed his American forces, and in doing so, he made one of the greatest tactical blunders in military history. He placed his best troops, the elite Continentals from Maryland and Delaware, commanded by a giant, fearless German officer named Baron de Kalb, on the right flank. But on his left flank, facing the open forest, Gates placed his weakest troops, the sick, untested, and terrified militia. Across the field, Lord Cornwallis saw the American formation through the mist. He instantly recognized the weakness. Cornwallis placed his most elite and aggressive veterans directly opposite the American militia. The trap was set. The order to advance was given. The British line stepped forward. They did not fire a single shot. They simply marched through the fog in perfect, terrifying silence, their bayonets fixed. When they were just 50 yards away, the British soldiers let out a massive, blood-chilling battle cry and charged. The psychological pressure was too much. The American militia completely broke. Before the British even reached their lines, thousands of untrained militiamen threw down their loaded muskets and ran for the woods. It was a mass hysteria. The entire left side of the American army evaporated in seconds. Seeing half his army disintegrate, General Horatio Gates, the so-called hero of Saratoga, made a decision that would ruin his legacy forever. He turned his horse around and fled the battlefield. He did not stop riding until he was 60 miles away. The commander had abandoned his men. With the militia gone, the British turned all their attention to the remaining American forces on the right flank, the Maryland and Delaware Continentals. Barely 1,000 men, now completely surrounded. Commanding them was the towering German veteran, Baron de Kalb. Even though the battle was clearly lost, de Kalb and his men refused to surrender. What followed was one of the fiercest melees of the American Revolution. The heavy morning fog trapped the black gunpowder smoke close to the ground, turning the battlefield into a blinding, choking hell. For nearly an hour, these elite American troops fought like lions. They repelled wave after wave of British attacks, even launching desperate countercharges into the enemy lines. Baron de Kalb's horse was shot out from under him. Bleeding from a deep wound to the head, the giant commander continued to fight on foot, leading his men with his sword in hand. But bravery alone could not overcome the numbers. Lord Cornwallis released his devastating cavalry. The British dragoons smashed into the rear of the exhausted Continentals. The line finally shattered. Baron de Kalb fell to the ground, having sustained 11 different wounds in the fierce combat. The Battle of Camden was a devastating disaster for the American cause. Over 1,000 men were captured, and hundreds more fell in battle. The entire Southern Army was virtually destroyed in a single morning. General Gates's reputation was shattered forever. He was removed from command in disgrace, known only as the general who outran his own fleeing army. But the men who stayed behind earned immortal respect. Baron de Kalb passed away 3 days later in a British camp. Even his enemies were deeply moved by his legendary courage. He and the men of Maryland and Delaware proved that even in the face of overwhelming panic and terrible leadership, true soldiers will stand their ground. Thank you for watching this cinematic recreation of the Battle of Camden. If you appreciate these deep dives into history, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which battle we should cover next. Until next time.